So, welcome back to SEA's Coffee Retail Summit. My name is Yannis Apostolopoulos and I'm the CEO at the Specialty Coffee Association. I'm pleased to be joined today by Ximena Pastor and Alexander Zeleniuich for their talk, The Importance of a Strong Team to Support Your Vision. So, Ximena is the Director of Activities and co-founder of L'Atelier in Barcelona, as well as an investor in Ditta Artigianale. She began her career in Costa Rica and continued her studies in creative gastronomy and pastry arts in Barcelona. Ximena has worked in several Michelin-starred kitchens as a pastry chef, including Albert Adrià's Ticket Bar and Enigma. You may have seen her in documentaries like Chef's Table. In 2019, Ximena and her partner, Eric Ortinho, opened L'Atelier in Exempler, a neighborhood of Barcelona, a place where pastry shops, school, and kitchen unite in an avant-garde space. Last year, L'Atelier in Barcelona received Fava de Cacao Award, recognized as one of the top 5 bakeries in Catalonia, and is a winning award for the best artisanal cookie in Spain. So, in addition to all this, Ximena is an investor to Ditta Artigianale in Florence, bringing her expertise to the team and finding ways to offer great food to complement the great coffee that they are offering there. We are also joined by Alex. Alex is the Chief Operating Officer at Ditta Artigianale. He began his career in the United States, originally working after graduating from a New York university. Alex moved to Paris and he received a degree in cuisine and pastry from Le Cordon Bleu. In Paris, he also worked for a 2-star Michelin restaurant. Following this, Alex returned to the States working with the operations team of a fast-growing meal kit startup in Chicago before most recently co-founding an online specialty marketplace for chefs, which is called Hors d'Oeuvre. He joined Dita in July 2020, bringing together his passions for food, beverage, coffee, technology, and business. So before Ximena and Alex begin, I also want to provide some background about Ditta Artigianale. Dita was founded in 2013 by Francesco Sanapo and Patrick Hofer. Most of us in specialty coffee know Francesco already for his time at World Barista Championship stage or his accolades as Italy's best roaster. This experience certainly inspired the founding of Dita, helping to expand the concept of Italian craftsmanship to the third wave of coffee in Florence and in Italy. Dita is like the pioneer house for specialty coffee in Italy. With 3 Ditta Artigianale locations in the city, I think we will be hearing a bit more about what the future has in store for Dita today. Now I would like to welcome Ximena and Alex on the screen with us. Thank you both for joining us. I'll let you both tell us a bit about Dita, your roles on the team, and I will be back for Q&A at the end of the talk. For those who are watching, please leave questions for Ximena and Alex in the chat. So, just to get it going, I would like to ask a first question to both of you. What makes Dita so special?
Hi, Yannis. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, Ximena. Good to see you again.
Hey.
Hi, everyone that's joined. We appreciate you taking some time out of your day to listen in. So what makes Dita special? That's a great question. And I think a lot goes into a proper response. But I think an easy way to kind of summarize it would be really what our mission statement is. And at Dita, we really are responsible in everything that we do. So that goes from sourcing to the way we staff, to the way we serve a cup of coffee, a pastry, or a meal. And we like to think that our special blend is artisanal Italian with contemporary appeal. And we operate from the heart, from every bean that we roast to every cup that we serve. So that's really what our mission is. And for all of our employees, we make sure that on their first day, they learn our core values, which are respect, quality, education, balance, and warmth. And as Yannis mentioned in the beginning, we are Italy's first specialty coffee roaster and coffee shop. So we started in 2013, and since then it's been a great progression of expansion. Maybe I'll pause there and see if Ximena wants to maybe add some light on Francesco's kind of vision and how she's been involved with Dita.
Of course, Alex, thank you. Definitely, I think that apart from all you're saying, the vision comes from Francesco and Patrick, and especially Francesco, who is the soul of this project, and his love for coffee and his vision for what coffee should be is what drives all of us to support him, right? And in the end, when you have a project, you need to know who you are, who you want to be, and who you want your clients to understand who you are as well, and we need to defend this vision. So as we grow, or as we hopefully become a bigger company, we'll still have that soul, and we'll still have that personality to begin with. And I think this all comes from Francesco and his passion and his love of coffee.
Great. And just for the audience, I'm going to be running through some slides just to give everyone a visual understanding of our brand and our different coffee shops. So I'll just be periodically moving from slide to slide. And then, if there's questions about anything in there, we can, revisit that at the end of the session. So maybe I'll take this as an opportunity to kind of talk about how I got involved and what is really important in kind of my role as Chief Operating Officer, and how it relates to the central theme of this talk, which is really teamwork. So as Yannis mentioned, I joined about 11 months ago, and I was actually brought in by one of our investors who reached out to me about this opportunity. And it didn't take long for me to be convinced to move to Firenze to join such an amazing team. But what was necessary in the very beginning was to really understand not only the long-term vision for Francesco and Patrick, but what the team on the ground had to say about their experience at Dita. And so the first thing I did as part of a larger audit was take everybody out individually to just talk with them about how they got started at Dita, how long they'd been there, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they wanted to improve, and more importantly, kind of what they wanted out of their experience working for Dita. And I think in taking the time to speak with people individually, it helped understand a lot of the kind of the intricacies of the operation as it was at that point in time. And kind of what became clear to me from that exercise was, look, this is a company with a tremendous amount of potential, and what we need to start doing is putting in place some of the core building blocks that'll be sound enough to support the kind of growth that we want. And so one way that we kind of approached that was, in our business, some of the work can be a little bit repetitive. For example, when we're looking to open new cafes, and we're going to be opening our third next week, which we're all super excited about, we like to try to build tools that will enable us to grow in a very kind of effective way that we can then reuse, because we know we might have to do that exercise again. So one example would be, as we think about adding new cafes, we wanted to develop an objective framework that we could then populate to understand how we could effectively and objectively evaluate new locations that might be a good addition to the Dita portfolio. And in doing that, it became a new system that the staff got used to. And from that, we would meet once a week and review all the locations that we had seen to understand, okay, does it make sense to revisit one and pursue it further or not? So that's just one example. And I think fundamentally, even before putting that framework into place, one thing that we made sure to do was leverage technology to make our jobs easier. And so I created a Google Drive, and that was going to be the home for all important company material. And obviously the right people that needed access would have access, and they could go and use whatever they needed. And it was a very nice way to collaborate internally via the technology that's available to us. I think maybe I can pause there and talk and pass it over to Ximena to see you know, how she could explain a little bit how she got involved and kind of what her interests are. So Ximena.
Well, yeah, I definitely love Google Drive as well, Alex. But once you came in, we have to tell the story that there were already a small group of investors who had already taken that step to make Dita grow in that first level. And when our friend Burak, who also brought you into Dita, when he talked to us about this project, not only did he convey obviously the passion and the love that was behind this project, but also the growth opportunity that it had. So for me as an investor, when I invest in a project, I'm looking, well, I love gastronomy, I love food, I love drink, and I love the passion that goes with it. So first of all, I'm looking for that. I need to see a project that has a vision, that has a concept, and that the concept is already either accepted by the audience or has that chance to be accepted in the future. It doesn't matter if it's a new concept or if it's something that was there before, but it definitely has to convey that sense of quality and that sense of belonging. Something that I also liked about the project was that it was already part of the city. You know, like people felt that it was not just for foreigners, but it was also for themselves as people from Firenze, originally from Firenze. And that showed me that that's something that conveyed the soul of the city. As well, I think that we have to balance the vision that we want Dita to have, but also what the investors want. And in the end, investors want growth and dividends or whatever other way of creating revenue, no? And so for us as investors, we definitely want to see those opportunities of growth. And once we started doing the first investment, we felt that it was necessary to bring someone to be that organizing point, to be the person who brought all these ideas together into something that created revenue. Because sometimes when we have the visions and we have the dreams, we can let everything become a dream, you know, and it's just difficult to bring it to earth and to really make money out of it, you know. And in the end, when we have a business, that's what we want as well. No, it's a passion, but we also want to live well. So something that Burak felt that was very important and he tried to convey to us as investors is that for us to take that next step, we needed to bring someone in that would be that administration point and could bring everything together. And that's how Alex came into the project. So I think that it would be nice, Alex, if you could tell us a little bit about why you think it's important that we have some standards and how you try to let us as investors know what you were doing.
Sure, absolutely. And before I talk a little bit about that, Ximena, I think it's very important to unpack what team really means for any company. And not only is it the employees and the founder and, you know, the C-suite, but the investors are a part of the team. The board is obviously a part of a team. And so, you know, it's really, really important that everybody is aligned and working towards the same North Star. And I would say a big part of my job, which was very clear to me when I joined, was I was going to be the conduit or the liaison between the investors who sit all over the world and are all busy doing a lot of different things, but are also extremely interested in their investment, as well as the boots and the team on the ground here in Italy. And so for me to be effective, I wanted to really make sure that there was always a good line of communication back and forth, and that everybody, again, was moving towards the same goal. And so part of kind of one thing that we did initially to make that a reality was, to your point earlier, we put some standards in place and we put some systems in place. And so we became a little bit more professional and we said, okay, we're going to make sure that emails are polished for those that don't speak Italian, because I didn't speak Italian before I moved here. We said it would be great if everybody could make the effort to translate in English and Italian in the emails to make it a little bit easier for the person on the receiving end to understand what's happening. Obviously, it was my job to make an effort to learn Italian as quickly as possible, and it's coming slowly but surely. But we were going to say, okay, if we're going to have a meeting, let's create a calendar invitation. Let's send that out to the right people. Let's put an agenda in the meeting so that we know what we're talking about. Let's put a time frame. So if it's going to take 30 minutes, let's try to keep it within 30 minutes. If it's going to be longer, we can make it 45 or 60 minutes. But let's just become a little bit more organized. And then, with the meetings, let's also make sure we send a recap so that it's very clear what was discussed during the meeting and what the next steps are, who the action owners are, what the action items are, and when they're due. And that's how we can kind of keep things moving along. And so little details like that for all the entrepreneurs that are listening, I think really help make for a well-oiled machine that not only does it improve communication, but it really helps, empower the people to know what their true role and responsibility within the organization is. And you can also start to see where there might be challenges or roadblocks, because those red flags become a little bit more evident, because now some of this process is exposing all of that. And so it may seem very rudimentary, but I think that was my first step in when I took this job, was kind of when I talked earlier about doing that audit. It was understanding how things were being done to present, to current, and then how can we create some new protocols to make things a little bit more seamless as we prepare to scale and grow in the future. And so the last kind of major change that we made, which we all thought was a good idea, was let's do quarterly investor updates. And so there's a couple reasons why we decided to do that. One would be that not only does it help me organize my thoughts as to what we accomplished in the last 3 months and what do we plan to accomplish in the next 3 months, it also enables the investors who join that call, which is 1 hour every 3 months, to get the 50,000 foot view of what's going on in Italy with Dita. And it's also a forum to talk about open items that may have dramatic change on the business. And so those calls are every 3 months. We put a little deck together, we present the deck, and then we make it very conversational. And at Dita, we're extremely fortunate because our investors are all passionate about hospitality like Ximena. They all care about specialty coffee. They believe in us, and so they want to have involvement. And if they want to be a little bit more passive, that's fine. We send a recording of the meeting out at the end, as well as the PowerPoint. But if they want to get involved, they can definitely use that 1 hour to really have a productive conversation. So I'll actually ask Ximena, do you find those calls to be helpful and effective? And what's your general feedback about that?
Well, yes, I do, because since after Burak, of course, and the founding of Dita originally, I was part of one of the first groups of investors. And I always depended on Burak, let's say, for him to tell me what was going on, what was happening. And we both have very busy lives. And of course, Francesco and Patrick have extremely busy lives. So this helped me to be more involved in the project again. This helped me to make sure that not only I know what's happening, but also to lend a helping hand in any way that I can. I also have a school. I'm also involved in the gastronomy business. And that's part of, I think, that when you guys decided to give an extra effort in the food offering in the shop, I think part of it came from that inspiration. Francesco's been in my school, and I think that we know that we can learn from each other. And as I listen to also other investors and see their input, I'm also learning for myself, and I'm also applying these things that I learned from you guys into my own business. So it's something that, to me, it's a symbiosis, almost a symbiotic meeting, where I understand what's happening in Dita. I am involved in my investment, but also I think that I can learn as well from what we're doing over there and apply it into my own business and my own life. And I think, Alex, that it would be nice for the audience to know a little bit about what's our plans, what's happening right now in Dita, and what's coming up for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to shed some light on what's coming next. So I think I actually saw a question in the audience about it, but we are in the process of opening our third and largest cafe, which we hope to open early next week. It's been a long time coming, but this will be a great addition to the Dita portfolio. We're calling it Carducci because it's on Via Carducci. It's in Piazza Sant'Ambrogio of Firenze, which is a very bustling kind of local hub of the city. And so not only will we have a full service cafe, full service in the sense that we do our pastry and our brunch program, but we will also have our Scuola del Caffè. And I want to take a moment to just talk a little bit about the school, because it's extremely important to Dita as well as to the future of the specialty coffee industry. And we're calling it specifically Scuola del Caffè because we want it to be a hub for the industry. We want it to be a place that people can come and learn from each other and share ideas to continue to build on specialty coffee around the world. That's something that's extremely important to Francesco and Patrick. And we have been very, very fortunate that some of our staff are true veterans of the industry as well as veterans of our coffee shops, and they've gone through the ranks of becoming exceptional baristas. Some of them have even competed on the national stage for the Barista Championship of Italy as well as the world stage. And so specific folks in the team are definitely taking the time to get more involved and develop a great curriculum that will be approachable to anybody from the tourist that's visiting Firenze and wants to get a 2-hour lesson in coffee and take a break from all the art museum trekking and just come in and enjoy a great cup of coffee and learn a little bit about kind of where the industry is going, to experts that want to take a more involved kind of curriculum or 40-hour course to become an expert in one component of coffee, whether it's roasting, whether it's preparing, brewing, latte art, all that good stuff. So that's one big new development for Dita, and that'll be hopefully again opening early next week. So if you are in Florence, or if you plan to be in Florence in the next few weeks or months, please come visit us at either Sprone, Neri, or Carducci. And then I think, more generally, we have some big priorities that we're trying to execute on. We are in the process of trying to move our roastery into Firenze because we do see our identity being really linked to this city, as you talked about community earlier, Ximena. So we're currently looking at spaces that would make for a good fit in Florence. And then along with that, we're also obviously looking for new cafe locations. I spoke a little bit about that earlier in the talk, but we're looking around Florence to understand how we could maybe expand, maybe open a new unit in a new locale, new neighborhood. And then on top of that, we know that because we're now going to be three cafes, what goes best with a great cup of coffee but a great pastry. And so we're trying to find a way to centralize production for pastry. And that's actually a great segue into kind of how important your relationship to Dita is, Ximena, because as we look to maybe open a bakery production space within Florence, we're going to count on you and your expertise with the school you've built in Barcelona to help us understand the best way to operate that production space, and maybe even find a way to have a transfer of staff. If there's a high potential student of yours that's finishing the school and would want to come to Florence and join our team. That's the kind of collaboration that we live for and we really want in our investors. So maybe I'll pause there and let you talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, Alex, definitely. I think that specialty coffee deserves great food to accompany it. I think that it's common sometimes to see these great coffee places and they have specialty coffee. They're doing great coffee, but then you see the food offering and it's terrible, and it's just something that it's inconceivable because you're already working with a beautiful artisanal product, and there's a lot of hands that come into this, from the person that grows it to the people that to the fermentation, to the drying, to the roasting, to the preparing. It's a whole, to even the selling of the coffee. There's a lot of love involved, and I think that the food has to accompany it. And the effort that it takes to serve good food sometimes it's the same as offering bad food, and we need to take a second to think about this. And if we're talking about quality and if we have a discourse about who we are as a company, we need to be complete, and it has to be something that's full circle. So in this case, I know Francesco and Patrick always love great food as well. And they've also always expressed to me their concern about this issue. Something that's interesting as well in the case of Dita is that there's always been a lot of experimenting into seeing what the customer wants, whether it be a more American-based pastry, whether it be more European. I think that it's important that we need to convey who we really are. We need to express who we are, and we need to create a cart or a menu that reflects that. We don't need to be this guy or that guy. We need to be ourselves. So it's very important that we have and it's best to have few things than to have a big menu and that menu is terrible. It's just best to have 3 to 4 great pastries or 2 sandwiches or 1 salad, and have something that's really and truly great than to have more things. So in our case, as we keep growing, we had several ways to grow. We could either buy from a person that already produces, a company that already produces these things, and we can just finish them in our shops. We could use a kitchen that was already made. Nowadays, there's a lot of dark kitchens. There's a lot of these new systems that we could rent for a few hours, and we can have a pastry chef that takes over the space, and then we finish up all the decorations or the reheatings in the shops. Or we could have our own place and fit it to our necessities. This is something that every company has to think about. What way are they gonna be able to create this new menu? And the 3 ways are great. For example, I work in Barcelona with a specialty coffee company called 3 Marks Coffee, and we make for them the croissants. They have a great, beautiful coffee. They have a beautiful croissant. And they also make in-house several other small pastries like small cakes and cookies and things like that. But once you go to 3 Marks Coffee, you know that they have a great menu. So in our case for Dita, I think that right now that's what we're trying to do, to be able to purvey all these shops, and hopefully in the future be able to purvey for 2 or 3 more shops if we open. And we're already making this investment, so we want this investment to be able to grow as well. In the case of the person that has to work with us, it has to be somebody who knows what they're doing, of course. But nowadays, there's a lot of people who studied pastry arts, a lot of young people that want to be involved in a project like Dita. They want to be part of a family that is a work family, and they want to feel the t-shirt. They want to love the company that they work for. They want to feel passion for who they work with as well. And right now we're trying to find the best way for us to grow in Dita. And we definitely think that maybe a hybrid between a ghost kitchen where we do part of the production there, and to have our own space where we do other parts of the production will be the best for us. And hopefully I'll be able to send some young students who are already graduated, but have that passion and want to live in Firenze, of course, hopefully to grow this part of the business and have a great product linked, a food product linked to our beautiful coffee.
Great, great. And maybe just before we move to questions, I know we're supposed to do that right about now, but I do want to mention, you know, this talk is about teamwork, and obviously all the things that Ximena and I have been discussing in the last 30 minutes can't be done by just one person or two people. It really requires a team of, you know, rock solid rock stars. And so I'm very fortunate because the team that was already here that we've continued to build on is really just that. And I want to make sure to give a nod to all of them, because whether it's designing the food program and doing all the analysis on the food cost, or it's understanding our customer and working with our marketing team, as well as, you know, learning from our website and our social media, kind of what insights we can grab from there to have a better offering. It really is all about the team behind the engine. And so it's, you know, in for all the entrepreneurs that are listening, think about what's your biggest priority and how can you put the right team in place to tackle that one vertical, and don't spread people too thin. Try to be very focused. So for us, just to give a kind of high level overview, we do strategy, we do food and beverage, we do marketing, we do e-commerce, and we do wholesale, because those are kind of our main channels. And because of that, we're very organized. And so I can have a meeting with the head of each of those departments once a week and understand, okay, what are the roadblocks? How can we move forward to achieve our goals? And then I also should mention that one core offering that we didn't talk about yet that is also kind of in the Dita portfolio is that we have a minority stake in an artisanal gin business, which is a great match, because when we're not serving coffee in the evening, we can serve Peter and Florence gin cocktails. And so we're very unique in that sense, but that also requires a specific type of organization, because you need good bartenders to make good drinks for aperitivo hour and after. So I know that was a lot of information, but maybe I'll let Giannis come back on and we can address some of the questions.
So first of all, thank you all so much. Like both of you, that has been a great presentation, and I'm so much looking forward going to Carducci and visiting Dita again, because it's a great place to visit. And Florence, it's an amazing place to be. So we have received a lot of questions, and I would try to navigate between the questions when it comes to investment, when it comes to food, and when it comes to real operations. But first of all, I'd like to ask you a question that I received from my team for both of you. So since you both have backgrounds in Michelin-starred kitchens, could you speak about some of the similarities and difference between those environments and Dita? So how does the approach to Michelin level dining compare to contracts with a specialty coffee shop?
Ximena, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I definitely think that the type of person that works for Dita is very similar, in the sense that it's usually people that have a passion for this area of gastronomy. To me, coffee is gastronomy, you know, and it's something that has to move out of the old concepts of coffee just for the energy or for the morning beverage, no? And the person that wants to work for a place like Dita is very similar to the person that wants to work for a Michelin-starred restaurant. And another part is the type of client. In a way, the client that goes to specialty coffee wants excellence. They want to take time to enjoy a beautiful cup of coffee. And it's something that transports them out of their daily life. You know, it's a small 5-minute way to transport yourself into into something else. And when we go to a gastronomic restaurant, that's what we want. No, we want the experience, we want the food, but we want to get ourselves out of our daily lives.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And I would just add that, an approach, because you used the word approach, Giannis, in any kind of Michelin environment is excellent. And the standard is very high. So whether it's, how you do your work or the final product that you offer to your consumer, it needs to be premium and there needs to be excellence across the board. And so it's very important that as a leader, you set that standard and you help people kind of achieve it. And I think for Dita, what we've tried to do is, if we're going to kind of play off of the 3-star system, if I'm not mistaken, 1 star initially when the guide was made by the Michelin brothers to sell more tires was they gave maps to people and they said, okay, go use your new automobiles and your tires and use these maps and go try these restaurants. And if it has 1 star, it's worth the stop. So go there if it has 1 star. If it has 2 stars, it's worth the detour. So if you're going from point A to point B, stop at this 2-star because it's worth the extra time. And if it has 3 stars, it means it's worth the destination. And so it doesn't matter if you're going from A to B, you should just go there and eat there. And I think for Dita, if we're going to talk about coffee, we hope we're a 3-star and a destination for people to come to.
Perfect. I really love that analogy, because it talks about the experience at the end of the day. It's all about experiences and what the hospitality that it's offered, because no matter if it's like the best food in the world and the best coffee of the world, it needs to be presented in a way that people are felt welcome and they enjoy the whole experience. And I think this is really important when you talk about your teams. Having said that, I will first go to the people aspect, because I think this is important. And I think this is something that we need to look at. It's the team. And then I will go to the investors, and finally I will go to the operations. But when it comes to the team, there is a question here, Alex. It says, in your experience, what would be your top 3 important ways, methods to keep your team engaged, which in turn could reduce your staff turnover? So both of you have worked in environments that you are managing teams. And teams is all about people. So how do you approach that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the first thing that needs to be done is you need to have open communication with your team. And so you need to check in, but you need to also have an environment so that people feel comfortable talking about their experience, both good and bad. Because if I don't know what's bothering you, then I can't fix it and help retain you and make sure that you're happy doing what you're doing. So I try to touch base with team members as much as possible. I spend my working day bouncing from cafe to cafe, talking with folks. And I always say, look, I have an open door policy. I know Francesco, Patrick do as well. So please come express and tell us what your experience is like, so that we can try to, either keep it the same because you're really happy, or we can change it if it needs to be adjusted, or maybe it turns out you're interested in roasting and so you want to do that. Okay, well, I didn't know that before, but let's make a plan to get you to help roasting. So I would say communication's fundamental. Another thing that we make sure to do is we try to have some good kind of teamwork exercises. And so we get people together to meet on a regular basis and try to help build morale, and also just make things a little bit fun, because it's not always just work. So we want to create a good, attractive culture, and we want people to be proud to wear one of these t-shirts and come to work every day. And so I think those are kind of 2 things that we try to do to retain good talent and attract talent.
Ximena, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, sure. Definitely a part of what Alex is saying, which is communication is key. I do think that the business itself and the identity of the business itself has to I always try to compare these team quality situations to like El Barça, from the Football Club Barcelona, that people like love to be a part of El Barça, that they love El Barça. And I think that we need to instill that same love in the team. People have to be proud of what they're doing, proud of where they are working. And as Alex said, we have to give people opportunities to learn more things, to grow, feel that they're going to grow as well. And I always use a lot like the social media platform, let's say, to introduce different people from the team and into the work that they are doing. And I love to, when the press comes over or types of situations like that, I always try to give the team like a lot of like a platform for them to be seen as well. Sometimes when we have a founder, it's very easy to always be on the cover of everything, in the picture of everything, and we don't give that importance to the team. And in the end, to me, like, the team is everything. So I always like to give them that push, and it's nice for you as part of a team to see yourself as well and feel proud of what you're doing. So that's what I do.
Yeah, and I guess Francesco has been really good in promoting the teams and the people that have been working from Dita since day one. Like, he's been exceptional on promoting a team and a spirit there.
Yeah.
So moving from
Definitely.
people, I'll go to you first, Ximena, on the investment side. And there is a question here that says, what tools does Dita use to track the business in order to facilitate all of that regular communications with investors? And then Alex, you can jump in here as well.
Well, since the beginning, there's always been the yearly investors meeting. Usually it was in a real meeting, not like today that everything is online. It was a real meeting. We would meet all of us together in Firenze, and we would spend time together. We would go to the coffee shops. We would have dinner, enjoy as well as a team, as an investor team. And we would see the space and what was going on. As Alex entered the team as well, we started having these quarterly calls, and we kept as well the investors meeting yearly. And as a new tool, we can connect in an online way to that meeting as well, which before we could not. Most investors live in different parts of the world, so it's very difficult to have this happen. And now that there are more investors, it's even more difficult. So in our case, that's this communication tool has been very, very, very good to keep us posted on new events.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to really add. I mean, I can't wait till it's easier to travel and then everybody can come back, because I haven't even met all of our investors in person. So I think that's actually really important if we could do an annual in-person meeting, because it also gives the folks that have invested an opportunity to really have an experience at Dita and give real feedback, positive or negative. So I think we look forward to hopefully doing that soon. In terms of other tools, I mean, we use technology, like I said, so I try to give access to the investors to anything that they want to dive into. My goal in sending those kind of quarterly decks out is, if there's a slide that piques your interest and you want to go deeper on it, let me know, and I can probably share more information about it, whether it's finance or real estate or marketing or social media. So I think it's just having the open door policy, and hopefully if there's a question to go into more detail, I have something to share. But yeah, that's kind of where we are on the investor front, Yannis.
So for me, it's really interesting because you're actually dealing with a coffee shop that is about to grow as a chain with multiple locations, but also you're dealing with problems like a big company, like you're bringing someone who is an expert on running operations, but also navigating the investors. And I've been hearing Ximena talking about investors being all over the world, like on a big organization. and trying to give reports and try to keep that rapport with investors, where you actually see those maybe on fintech companies that they are trying to go ahead and do an IPO, or they are gathering funding. But it's really interesting to understand that you're running the business like literally a high-tech business these days, which is really, for me, a key takeaway of how you can actually think about a very traditional business like a coffee shop and hospitality in that modern context, which is, I think it's super useful. So having gone into this, I would like to go a bit more into operations. And you were talking about, Alex, about real estate and stuff like that. And there are two questions here that I would like to combine. And the question starts, and Ximena, you can always jump in this because you share the same background. Like, what are the considerations needed when picking a good location for a coffee shop? Like, you're expanding and you're picking up locations. Like, what are the criteria there? And then the second question that I have here, and I would like to combine it, is what are the first steps, moves that you take as a team before a new store is about to open?
Great questions. So first of all, I would say the goal is always to open a store that stays open. You don't want to open a store that you might have to close in 3 or 5 or 6 years. So it's very important to understand what your sweet spot is. And what I mean by sweet spot is maybe you have a cafe that you started that's doing really well, and you need to assess what makes it successful. So usually the size is a big one. So making sure it's not too small but not too big. The flow, like the checkout flow and the way the customer moves through the process of ordering and paying for the coffee, as well as the kind of most important things that make you who you are. So for Dita, for example, we really value natural light. And so for us, it's really important to try to get corner locations that are bright and open, where we have lots of windows, because we associate coffee with light, morning, afternoon. So I think once you get the kind of bullet point list down of what makes you, or if it's going to be your first location, what your ideal place would be, then you're at already a better starting point to actually assess locations. And so the framework we created, some of that stuff's going to be a little bit more subjective, right? Like the lighting, but the square meters won't be. So how big is it? What's the price per square meter? How would you evaluate the neighborhood? How would you evaluate the foot traffic? You should probably go there at least for a week and just sit across the street and see how many people walk by, at what time of day people are walking by. Another thing that we like to look for is what we call the rent revenue ratio. So we try to forecast how much revenue we think we could generate at that location. And then we want to say, okay, we don't want to pay, we want to try to pay between 5 and 10% of that in rent. So 5 is better than 10, 6, 7 we can talk about. Obviously, Florence is not a cheap city, but like, as long as we know the rent and we have a good idea of what we think we can generate, obviously with seasonal fluctuations, we can start to have a really good understanding of where we might be able to open a successful cafe. Another important thing, which may seem obvious, is how close you are to your other units. So on the one hand, it's good to be close because it makes it easy. If staff need a cover, they can easily switch. If somebody needs to bring something from one cafe to another, it's not hard. But you don't want to be too close that you're cannibalizing your own business. And so along that point, knowing the competitive landscape, knowing how many coffee shops are in that area, how many serve food, what's the pastry offering like, is it more tourist centric, is it more local centric? These are all like real minutia that you need to unpack, and you need to explain to the team that's going to be evaluating this, hey, these are really the things you're going to have to look out for, because these are going to make the difference between opening a successful unit versus one that might not be successful.
That's true, Alex. I think definitely this is one of the most important points when you create a business. You have to take your time. A lot of people feel that this is not as important, and they take a lot of time into creating maybe the branding and the image, which is super important. But if you're going to have, nowadays there's a lot of online businesses as well where you don't need to have a location, and it's also interesting. And sometimes you have to think about who you are and who you want to be, and if it's even necessary to have an brick and mortar location. But if you do want to have a brick and mortar, you need to really take your time. Something that is interesting is to start, as you said, walking around the city, see the type of client, if this person is the type of client that you think would pay for your offering. And but most importantly, I think, as you said, the workflow is super important to think about. And something that not a lot of people think about sometimes. They see something that's beautiful and amazing, but you need to see which is the laws and how the law plays out and how you can develop the locale. Because in our cities, especially Barcelona, Firenze, and similar cities, have a lot of laws that are very small and hidden. And then you get the locale, everything is perfect, and it ends up being a problem because you don't have an exit, a fire escape exit that is between this and these meters. So there's a lot of issues that you have to check, and that's very important to know what the law is in your city and how you can play with that law in that locale.
Yeah, I think that captures really well like what to consider. But I would like to ask the following, and that goes to you, Ximena. Like, you have like really operated restaurants and run businesses, but you're also now an investor. So what is the right time from opening your first outlet that someone needs to consider that operations is something we're pursuing or not? Like you talked about bringing in Alex, for example, or how you are thinking about the operations of the store. So what is the right moment there?
I think that the right moment is when the operations of the business now are starting to get out of your hands. The business has grown, and the amount of operations that happen in a daily basis, you can't do everything, as Alex said, and it's something that happens to me as well. I just can't do everything in the business, and sometimes when that point comes that you know that you're ready to grow, that the numbers are with you, that you are making money, and that you are feeling that your business is about to give that jump, but it's out of your hands anymore, that you're not able to be in all those different places. That's the time when you need to bring someone in to help you and to organize and to push the operations forward. There's many ways to bring someone in. Sometimes you need to bring someone in-house like Alex, because the size of the operations needed that. But now there are a lot of consulting businesses that you can also use. And with the technology, for example, myself in Atelier, we have a drive. We share a lot of our information with these people, the consulting businesses that help me control the business, L'Atelier. So there's a lot of ways that we can use the technology. And we need to be honest with ourselves and to know when we are ready to make that jump.
Thank you. I think that's important. So, Alex, the last question for you, and then I have one more from Ximena about dark kitchens. So, when you open a new location, we have a question here. It says, our attendee says, I'm pretty sure all of the standards and routines are in place, but do you add something new to make the new place unique, but still recognized as your brand?
That's a good question. So first of all, we try to create a playbook so that when we open a new location, we can just go through it, line item by line item and say, okay, here's the checklist. Do we have these things accounted for? Because at the end of the day, they're going to have a pastry case. They're going to have an espresso machine, might have a kitchen. So like those are kind of the bare bones that make Dita, or a coffee shop. We have a very kind of interesting approach to our branding. And what I would say is our DNA is very subtle. It's in the detail. And so part of our mission statement is about bringing, contemporary innovation to like Italian tradition. And I think when you walk into a Dita, you hopefully feel that. We've been very fortunate to partner with architects that specialize in taking very old buildings and adding kind of modern elements to it. And so those details are subtle. It could be as subtle as a door handle or like the lettering on the door. So we maintain, those things. When it comes to a new location and something that makes it unique, I mean, every location is going to be different. We're not Starbucks or McDonald's, so it's going to be a different space. And the kind of question I would ask myself and the team is, how can we make this unique? How can we make this Dita? What can we extract from this existing space to make this the Carducci location versus the Sprone location or the Neri location? And so in our case, in Carducci, it's a former monastery. It's a convent from the 14th century. So all of a sudden, that's its own thing. It's got a cloister that the other locations don't have. So I think a lot of it will actually be based on kind of the existing structure. And then it's a matter of how you kind of live into it, how you grow into it. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it makes complete sense. You have also to understand where you are and what kind of abilities the location gives you. So last question for you, Ximena, and that's mostly not, I think, for European audiences, for the US audience. In the US, recently, like the dark kitchens exploded during the pandemic because delivery was something that was not very strong in the US, but it exploded and takeaways during the pandemic. Do you think it's an opportunity for coffee shops, especially in the US, that they close early, like 6, 7 o'clock, to use that, I would say, that asset that they have and utilize it for a dark kitchen or other kind of, I would say, businesses?
Well, I think that nowadays, for example, in the case of Dita, after hours, we become a gin bar. So we expand the working hours to very early in the morning to very late at night. When you are paying rent and you're already paying for utilities, you need to make the best out of this investment, right? So we do need to find ways that we can use our space for longer hours. Then also something to take into account is that usually these kitchen places, you see a lot of people come in and come out. And they use a lot your materials and your machinery in an intensive way. So you also have to be careful because sometimes it's the money that you're making is worse compared to how your space is being treated. More than renting your own space, I think it's interesting the way that you can use dark kitchens that are already made for that to make up productions for in-house productions that you could never do it in your own space because you don't have the space, you don't have the machinery, and it's very interesting how you could grow or create a cart, especially in pastry. That is something that has a long shelf life, and it can be frozen and it can be fermented or cooked afterwards. It could be interesting to use these systems, but it's something to think about. It has to be well thought about, especially if you have the client for it, then it's no problem, but there needs to be a lot of rules and a lot of agreements to make sure that they're going to take care of your space just as you would,
So thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank both of you. It was a great session. I know we have more questions to answer, but we are at the top of the hour, and I would have to close this session. So thank you all so much. There will be a discussion tomorrow with George Lucas from Warehouse about extended hours, a coffee shop that operates from 5 in the morning until 2 at night. So thank you. That wraps up the second session. We will be back with the third session after a short half an hour break, with some videos from our sponsors, including our title sponsor, BWT Water and More. Grab a coffee and join our discussions in the chat in the meantime. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
Ximena.
Bye.
Have a good summit. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.